One of the strange things about gravity is that it can't be seen directly. In fact, it can only be measured by the influence it exerts on objects around it. In 1846, astronomers noticed a strange wobble in the orbit of Uranus, a deviation from its expected path. They couldn't see what was causing it, but the math was clear. Something massive had to be out there, tugging it off course. When they turned their telescopes to where the numbers predicted, they found Neptune, a new planet no one had seen before, discovered not by sight, but by its effects on everything around it. People also have a certain type of gravity, not measured in mass, but by the impact they have on the world around them. Some people drift through life without barely leaving a ripple, while others become the center that holds entire social systems in orbit. Well, in 2023, Barry Schmalbach had been that kind of person. He built a life in Cape Coral, Florida, that revolved around consistency. He was the friend who always showed up, the neighbor who always remembered your birthday, the colleague who knew when to check in. His life radiated outward in concentric circles of connection, each one held in place by his reliability, warmth, and gravity. So, one day when Barry vanished without a word, the silence he left behind wasn't just unsettling, it was impossible. Detectives had no crime scene, no weapon, they didn't even have a body. But what they did have was a certainty shared by everyone who knew Barry, that he hadn't just simply walked away. And just like those astronomers, detectives began searching the darkness for something they knew must be there. A crime they couldn't see yet, but were sure had occurred. Join me now as we examine the disappearance of Barry Schmalbach, a man who vanished without a trace from his Florida condominium. You'll hear a desperate voicemail left in the final hour, a search that spanned counties, and a trail of evidence buried beneath the lies, dirt, and duct tape. We'll also reveal how detectives built a murder case brick by brick, and how the person responsible almost got away with it. On July 19, 2023, the Florida sun cast long shadows across Beach Parkway as another perfect day dawned in Cape Coral. This sprawling city in Lee County, with its networks of canals and waterways, had become a magnet for retirees and professionals seeking the good life under endless blue skies. By the time the sun rose, 56-year-old Barry James Schmalbach had already been walking for nearly 2 hours. It was his daily routine. He'd wake up at 4:30, head out the door, and walk 6 miles through the quiet streets before the Florida heat set in. Barry had found his slice of paradise in Cape Coral. He lived on a third-floor condo on Beach Parkway, just steps away from the Caloosahatchee River.
He was my friend, and we originally met at Restaurant Depot where we worked together.
Miguel Blanco had been friends with Barry for many years.
It's a wholesale for where other restaurants shop at for their food and supplies. So I worked in the equipment and supply department, and he was the head buyer for that department. He was the VP.
Barry had spent most of his life and corporate career working in Chicago, Illinois. But when he decided he was ready for a change of scenery, he chose Florida.
And then since me and Tom were down here, he felt more comfortable coming to this area. And I want to say it was in 2021, as I helped him look for the condo that he moved into on Beach Parkway.
The move gave Barry the chance to start his own restaurant supply company. And like many of his new ventures, it had started out slowly. But after 2 years, business was beginning to boom. Still, Barry's move to Cape Coral hadn't just been about the warm weather or success. It was about finding a community where his meticulous nature and generous spirit could thrive. Neighbors like Ruth Ciotti were happy to welcome Barry into their tight-knit condominium complex.
It's very close. The people are very close. It's 16 units, and there's some snowbirds there. Permanently, there's about 11 units filled, and so we all usually go to the pool in the afternoon. Just meet down there. You're there, you're there. If you're not, it's not a big deal.
It didn't take long for Barry to fully integrate himself with his new neighbors. He was fun, kind, and generous.
Yeah, the condo group is a pretty close-knit group. We knew each other and comings and goings since we were having our Christmas Eve get-together. They had waited to have it because I was coming home, which I thought was pretty special, that they waited for me. They didn't have to.
Becky Weber was one of the last neighbors to meet Barry for the first time.
I had heard good things about him, and he had given me a gift. He gave me a bottle of my favorite tequila. He had gone out of his way to converse with our neighbors, to find out what my likes were, simply going off of their recommendations that I was a good person and a good friend. I was shocked. I had never had somebody who had never met me before, was a complete stranger, give me something that was so personal. And that told me a lot about Barry, that he would go out of his way to meet a complete stranger and to give me a gift.
In just a few short months, Barry had become part of the fabric of their happy community.
Whenever I was home, we would always meet around 3, 4 o'clock, get in the pool, sit around, converse about our day. Sometimes it was meet for dinner. Sometimes we'd go out to dinner. Sometimes my neighbor Kim and Lisa would go out with Barry to go shopping, looking for stuff for the condo complex. I mean, we got to know each other pretty well, pretty quick.
By the end of 2022, Barry had been living with his new neighbors for just over a year. But during a trip back home to Illinois in November, he had a health scare, one that would change the course of his life. It happened while visiting his lifelong friend, Leon Giacchetti.
I grew up with Barry. I've known him for 45 years, maybe longer. I'm his POA, power of attorney, if something should go wrong with him. So I can tell you in November and December of 22, he had AFib, and my daughter and I brought him to a hospital. It was busy. We brought him to a clinic. They determined that he was AFib. They called an ambulance, and that's when he was at our house visiting. So they brought him to the hospital. That week they determined what the problem was. They treated it with medication. And then in December, they did cardio inversion, I believe. And that seemed to correct the issue with him having AFib. Although he would have to remain taking medication for probably forever at that point.
Barry's heart condition was a giant wake-up call for him. According to Rosalie Follico, he made a decision right then and there to put his health first.
Barry was my best friend for 40 years. He was everything to me. We met when we were very young, so I was kind of like his mom. We were best friends, talked all the time. So Barry had a heart condition that kind of took him by surprise, and he wanted to be healthy and live to be an old man. So he lost like over 100 pounds, and he was very, very good about his eating, counting his macros. He walked like 6 miles, I want to say, a day. He was out like as soon as the sun rose in the mornings before the Florida heat hit.
One of the tools Barry used to aid in his fitness journey was a brand new Apple Watch, an idea he got from Becky Weber.
Barry and I were in the pool one day, and I had received my new Apple Watch. It was an Apple Watch Ultra. It's got a titanium case. It can be used as a dive watch. But the unique feature that Barry was interested in was the fact that it could tell your heart rate and your blood oxygen level. I had showed him how I could use it in the pool, use it at the beach, use it in the water. And at any given time, I could receive a phone call because it has cell service. Within a day or two, Barry had gone out and got one. And after that time, I had never seen him without it on. Barry never went anywhere without his wallet or his phone. Subsequently, it became his wallet, his phone, and his Apple Watch.
Every day like clockwork, Barry and his Apple Watch walked the streets of Cape Coral in the pre-dawn glow. And being the social creature he was, Barry often used those early hours to catch up with old friends. Long phone calls that kept him connected to the people he cared about the most. But by the spring of 2023, those quiet morning walks had taken on a new meaning, because Barry had started bringing someone along with him. His new boyfriend, 35-year-old Christopher Davis. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. You know, we've covered a lot of cases since we started our podcast, and almost always there's one factor that keeps coming up: money lurking in the background. Whether it's motive, the breaking point, or the cover-up, financial stress can push people into desperate choices, and a lack of financial literacy can leave victims wide open. That's why giving kids the tools to understand money isn't just smart, it's protection. With Greenlight, you can keep your family's financial future from turning into another cautionary tale. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families. Think of it as the ultimate safety net, teaching kids and teens about money before bad habits or costly mistakes can take hold. I really wish we had that when I was a kid, but then again, we didn't even have the internet. Parents can send money quickly, track every purchase with real-time notifications, and assign chores for allowance, so your home stays orderly instead of feeling like a crime scene. Greenlight helps kids learn how to save, invest, and build confidence with money. These are the skills that keep them from becoming victims of scams, fraud, or financial missteps down the line. Give your kids the financial education many of us never got. Join millions of parents already using Greenlight, the #1 family finance and safety app. So if you've got kids, you gotta check out Greenlight. I use this, and you should too. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/madness. That's greenlight.com/madness to get started. greenlight.com/madness. On May 5th, 2023, Miguel Blanco and his partner, Tom Wilson, hosted a Cinco de Mayo party at their home. It was there that Barry met Christopher for the first time, and they connected immediately, despite their different circumstances. Barry was a successful businessman in his mid-50s, while Christopher was 20 years younger, unemployed, and a bit down on his luck. Then just days after the party, Barry surprised Becky Weber with an unexpected announcement.
Barry had come down to the pool when Kim and I were down there at the Palapa and had told us that he was at Miguel and Tom's house for a Cinco de Mayo party. And subsequently, Barry had indicated to myself and my neighbor Kim Zansultani that Mr. Davis was living with him and residing in his unit.
It was the first time Barry had invited anyone to live with him since moving to Beach Parkway. Friends and neighbors were surprised. Moving someone in so quickly, especially someone he just met, seemed out of character for Barry. But in any case, a friend of Barry's was a friend of theirs, and so they did their best to welcome Christopher into the fold. By July 19th, Barry and Christopher had been living together for about 10 weeks. That evening, they made plans to head out to Cruiser's Lounge, a popular gay bar in downtown Cape Coral, and invited Miguel Blanco to join them.
So Barry called me. He texted me that night to go join him for drag queen bingo, him and Christopher, and I told him I couldn't because I had a dinner planned.
So the couple went out on their own. Cruiser's was less than a mile away, but they took a taxi anyway, maybe to avoid the Florida heat, maybe just out of habit. Inside, they found seats at the bar and settled in for the night, but almost immediately, there was tension. The bartender on duty was one of Christopher's exes, the man he'd been seeing just before Barry. And while nothing was said out loud, body language told the story. The bartender later recalled how the two appeared locked in a quiet disagreement, voices low, but frustration written across their faces. Then around 6 p.m., Barry sent a message to Rosalie Fallico, his longtime friend and confidant, a message that seemed to hint something deeper was going on. I am at the bar with my BF, but I am so done with the BS. Please call me tomorrow. I miss you so much.
Well, Barry was expressing that he was unhappy with something that was happening in his life at the bar, and that he's done with the bullshit, is how I interpret BS. And I had to call him in tomorrow.
Just after 8 p.m., Barry paid the tab and ordered a car to take them home. But before it arrived, something changed. Without warning, Barry stood up from his seat and walked out of the bar. Witnesses say Christopher rushed after him, nearly chasing Barry into the parking lot. At 8:21 p.m., Barry called Miguel Blanco.
I received a call during the dinner, and I didn't answer it, and he left a voicemail.
10 minutes later, Rosalie received another text message. It's okay, I love him. He's a knucklehead, but I can't wait to speak to you. I've had a few. But there was something about the message that felt off.
It was not written the way Barry would speak. Yeah, Barry didn't use punctuation. When he used a period, it was always a space and a period. Barry always spelled out the word okay, O-K-A-Y. It was just something that he never did. This has perfect punctuation, which was very confusing to me. And then it said, I've had a few. Well, it was kind of like, if you knew Barry, you know Barry, he drank daily. He always had a few. So it's kind of like, you see this, I see this. Why do we talk about it? It was something that was just never spoken about. And he would never say, I love him. That was something that he would never have said to me. He was very private. He would never have shared that. He did not speak about that part of his life. Yes, I knew he was a gay man, but we didn't talk about anything related to dating.
To Rosalie, the wording wasn't just unusual, it was wrong. The tone, the phrasing, the punctuation, it didn't sound like Barry. It sounded like someone trying to sound like Barry. The next morning on July 20th, Miguel woke up and listened to the voicemail Barry had left.
Hey, it's me. Give me a call. I need your help. I need to get rid of this idiot because I can't take it anymore.
After hearing the voicemail, Miguel made multiple attempts to call Barry, but he wasn't answering. Miguel reasoned Barry might have just been laying low, embarrassed maybe, letting things cool off after a rough night. Rosalie had also spent the day trying to get in touch, unsettled by the strange message from the night before.
I tried, but there was no answer. Barry was a pretty instant responder. He would, within the same hour generally, maybe the same day if he was traveling and had bad reception, but if I texted him, he texted me back. If I called him, if he was busy, he'd call me right back.
The silence from Barry wasn't just uncharacteristic. It was alarming, and it didn't stop. Throughout Thursday and into Friday, there were no calls, no texts, no replies, just silence, stretching longer with every passing hour. By Friday evening, July 21st, Miguel and his partner, Tom Wilson, decided it was time to check on Barry in person.
We arrived, parked in the parking lot. I noticed that Barry's vehicle was not there, okay? And there were some packages lying around, mailed for his business. One was down on the ground near the mailbox, the other was outside his door. Miguel and I picked up the packages. We went to the door, knocked on the door. There's no response.
Neither Barry nor Christopher were at home, but Barry had given Miguel and Thomas a spare key to his condo.
So I opened the door, looked in. I set the packages on the bar, and then I noticed things were just not right. Barry liked to sit in the dark, and he was very neat and clean. The place was a mess, and every light in the place was on. I mean, things lying around, furniture not where it would normally be, that kind of thing. Looked at Miguel and I said, we need to leave.
The messy state of Barry's condo was a complete shock to Miguel.
Very clean, like inside and outside. He would clean it all the time. He would make sure he vacuumed it and cleaned it, and he was like very pristine about taking care of his home. Like I could eat off the floor, how clean it was.
If there was one thing everyone knew about Barry, is that he was meticulous, almost obsessively so.
He always folded my clothes, so I might have been the messy one. But he was very meticulous and he was very clean. Everything was always orderly. It was just who he was. Immaculate. He was very, very clean. He was very meticulous, the way everything was taken care of.
The next day, July 22nd, Tom Wilson drove by and noticed Barry's Jeep back in its usual spot. Miguel then sent Christopher a text asking where Barry was. Christopher's reply was surprising. "I thought he was with you. He told me he went to stay with some friends. He told me he needed some space and wanted to think about things and wouldn't return calls. He did the same thing when he was in Wisconsin. In California, I tried calling him a bunch. He texted me and told me not to call him, to give him space. But if he's not with you, then I'm pissed off and think I'm going to leave the house." Christopher also spoke with the neighbor Becky Weber that same day.
My husband and I were swimming in the pool when Mr. Davis approached the gate to the pool area. Somewhat solemn, agitated, he had approached the gate and told us that he had called the police to report Barry missing and proceeded to become distraught. Very emphatic with his mannerisms, so much so that I became worried for his person and his emotional safety at that time, enough that I got out of the pool and approached him. We had discussed that when was Barry missing, and because I had not any knowledge or awareness that he was missing. And that's when he indicated that he had been gone since Wednesday after they went out to cruisers. And Chris had stated that he had left some belongings behind, one of the belongings being his Apple Watch, and that he was worried he couldn't get a hold of him and reach him by phone. And that's when subsequently I followed Chris into their condo unit. I looked off into the bedroom, and the blankets and sheets for the bed were disturbed and disheveled. And Chris brought me over to Barry's workstation. Barry's laptop was in the rear corner. Barry's wallet was in the front left corner. His Apple Watch was next to it.
Christopher then confided in Becky he'd been having relationship problems with Barry.
Chris proceeded to try to show me some emails that were on Barry's laptop that he had opened into his personal email file, indicating that Barry was seeing other men and cheating on him. And we had a discussion about, was he really cheating? Because prior to that, Chris had told me that they were in an open relationship. And I said, well, you and Barry have to define what that open relationship is. It means different things for different people. And if you truly have an open relationship, then you can't get upset with him for talking to other men unless you guys have predefined what that means. He was worried that Barry was going to break up with him. I asked him why he was worried, and he said because Barry was upset with him because he put a GPS tracker on his phone. He said he was worried because if he broke up with him, he was going to have no money and no place to stay. And I had said to Chris, do you really think Barry, being the kind of person that he is, that he would leave you high and dry? He wouldn't help you go somewhere else?
Think about the last time you were out running errands. Maybe you were standing in line for coffee, trying to squeeze in a little online shopping while you waited. You find something you actually want, toss it in your cart, and when you're ready to pay, you realize you don't feel like digging through your bag for your card with 10 people behind you. You're close to just backing out and telling yourself you'll buy it later, even though you know you probably won't. And then you notice it, the purple shop button. One tap, and everything's already there. Your payment info, your shipping details, all set up and ready to go. You manage to check out your online purchase before your name is even called for your coffee. That's what Shopify does. It makes the whole process easier. Whether you're buying something on the go or creating an online store of your own, it's simple, fast, and built to take the stress out of shopping. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Shopify gives you the leg up with hundreds of beautiful ready-to-go templates to express your brand style and forget about the code. Tackle all those important tasks in one place, from inventory payments to analytics and more. Spread your brand's word with built-in marketing and email tools to find and keep new customers. And of course, did I mention the iconic purple Shop Pay button that's used by millions of businesses around the world? It's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. Your customers already love it. If you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time you head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/madness. Go to shopify.com/madness. Shopify.com/madness. When police arrived to speak with Christopher about Barry's disappearance, he repeated the same story. According to Christopher, Barry had ghosted him 3 or 4 times before, so he hadn't thought there was any reason to call police. He also suggested Barry might be talking to another man behind his back. Barry's laptop wasn't password protected, and Christopher admitted he'd gone through it. Inside, he claimed he found Google Chats, Grindr messages, and conversations on another app called Sniffies. If police were going to look for Barry, Christopher told them, those dating apps would be the place to start. The responding officer took the report, but based on Christopher's statements, decided Barry didn't meet the criteria for an endangered missing person, a decision that would soon be challenged. When detectives spoke with Miguel Blanco, he'd filed his own missing persons report. He made it clear, Barry's silence wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. Barry wasn't the type of person to ghost anyone. Friends and neighbors said the same. Barry never left town without telling someone where he was going. He never ignored messages for days, and he certainly never left without his wallet or his Apple Watch. Miguel also pointed out something odd about Barry's Jeep, now sitting in the parking lot. Normally spotless inside out, its tires and wheel wells were caked with mud, something Barry would never have allowed. The consistencies of those accounts, friends and neighbors all saying the same thing, forced the police to take a harder look. Barry's disappearance was no longer seen as voluntary. They now suspected a serious crime had occurred. The only question was, where to find the proof?
I got called by my supervisor late at night, early morning, July 24th, and said that there was a case that she wanted me to take a look at when I got into work on Monday morning. It was a missing person case. Initially, my supervisor was out on a different call that night on another case and wanted me to take a look at it, said something didn't seem right. So I went in and looked at it that morning.
That's Detective Bryce Bierman of the Cape Coral Police Department, the lead investigator assigned to Barry's case.
You try and find out the last time they were seen and then put together a timeline based on collecting evidence, compiling videos, text messages, cell phone records, and just kind of putting everything together like a puzzle. July 19th. That was the last time that we can confirm that Barry Schmalbach was seen. We were able to determine that Barry and Chris had gone to Cruisers. It's probably a 3-4 minute drive tops. We were able to determine that they left somewhere in the neighborhood at 8 o'clock based on the receipt. We canvassed that entire area from Cruisers all the way back to the residence for video cameras. And we were able to put together at least 3 locations where they were on scene walking that evening.
Surveillance confirmed Barry and Christopher walked in the direction of their condo. Nothing in the footage suggested a confrontation. Barry's phone pinged near the condo around 8:30 p.m., then went completely offline just after 9. Not long after, Detective Bierman started working the case. he got a call from a neighbor in Barry's building. Kimberly Zansoltany lived directly below him, and she had something troubling to report.
I was off of work that day, and I stayed in, and I was watching some TV. I heard something directly right above my unit where I was sitting, because we have the same floor plans. I heard something being thrown up against the wall and heard, no, no, no. Couple minutes later, I heard this noise, and it gave me chills, like the hair on my arms, and it was, like someone losing their last breaths. I just sat there like, oh my God, what is that? And then maybe 10 minutes later, I heard chirp, chirp, which was a car, someone opening up their car. I know it had to be around 9 o'clock, and I thought, well, that's weird. There's only 3 of us on my side of the building, and they were on upstairs, and like I said, I know they go to bed early. Mary was downstairs, she don't go nowhere, and it was me. So I thought, well, it's time for me to go to bed. So I went to the front to lock the door, and as I walked by my window, I thought, let me see who. And I looked out, and Barry's Jeep was missing. I wanted to text Barry and say, what's going on up there? But I thought, let me just stay out of that.
Meanwhile, Christopher's phone records showed that at 9:20 p.m., he searched Walmart near me. 17 minutes later, surveillance cameras captured Barry's Jeep in the Walmart parking lot. The footage showed Christopher buying a large tarp and 2 rolls of duct tape with cash. Barry was nowhere in sight. The following morning, Christopher appeared on low security footage purchasing a hand truck. Detective Bierman then turned to another neighbor, Brian Job, and what Brian had to say was even more disturbing.
It's not uncommon for me to be awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. I heard some noise, so I got up, and as I got up and went out of the bedroom, I heard plastic, and I got concerned, so I went to the front door, opened it up just a little bit, maybe 10 inches, and I heard the plastic, and then within just a few seconds, I saw a person dragging something back into the, where I could see like the back half of them. They were bent over, dragging something. Well, I saw this individual and what he was wearing, and he fit the frame of Christopher Davis. And there was only 3 people in the entire building, 3 males that lived in the building at that time, myself, Chris, and Barry. So at 4:15, 4:30 in the morning, this individual had on black, dark athletic shorts and a dark top. And Chris, for all the times I've been around Chris, he always had on athletic shorts. That was his attire. The individual didn't see me. I sort of got frightened, and I shut the door and locked it right away.
Brian then went to his kitchen window and looked out.
I couldn't see down into the stairwell because it was all dark. There was no lights in the stairwell at that time.
This was strange because Brian himself had installed new exterior lights just a few months earlier.
At that point, the individual came up, and I could hear him go over top of me because my kitchen window is right there. He went right into the unit 303. And then some time went by, and I heard the car door close, chirp, and I got back to the window and looked, and then he was screwing the light bulb in. And as I looked down through the window, I could tell that the individual was carrying what I thought at the time was 2 beach bags or beach chairs that go into the bags that go over your shoulder. I can't be certain that they were beach chairs, but he was carrying something over each shoulder with straps. Well, at that point in time, my initial thought of what was going on, and then when I saw what I thought were beach chairs, kind of eased my mind, and I kind of was just sort of like, oh, they're going to the beach or they're going away for the weekend. I think they had just several weeks earlier had been in Key West, so I thought, well, they're going somewhere. And it kind of eased my mind. I got my coffee and went on with my day.
To confirm Brian's story, detectives dusted the exterior light bulb for fingerprints. Christopher's fingerprints were on it. Whatever he'd been doing at 4 in the morning, he clearly didn't want anyone to see. And from that point forward, Christopher Davis became Detective Bierman's #1 suspect. Using a combination of phone records, surveillance footage, and license plate readers, Detective Bierman was able to trace much of Christopher's activity on July 21st. Records showed he'd booked an Airbnb that day, using his brother's name instead of his own. The rental was in Clewiston, Florida, a rural town about 60 miles east of Cape Coral. While in Clewiston, Christopher stopped at an Ace Hardware store where he purchased a shovel and pickaxe. The next day, when Roxana Hernandez arrived to clean the Airbnb, she immediately noticed something was unusual.
It was a lot of debris and little branches and trees. So that was a little bit strange because all of that debris there that I know it was not from previous stays because we cleaned the house before. So we know that it was not like that. But then my mom called me because she was already in the bathrooms, cleaning the bathrooms, because she noticed a lot of sand inside of the shower from the main room. So I went there and saw it was a lot. In the bathroom, you have the combination of a shower and a bathtub, and it was a lot of sand in the shower, in the floor, and also at the bathtub. So very unusual, but a lot.
Before returning to Cape Coral, Christopher made a second stop, this time at an Ace Hardware store closer to home.
I was in the office. I don't recall exactly what I was working on, but I was in my office.
Carlton Hewitt was working as store manager that day.
Well, it looked like somebody was throwing something into our dumpster, which was a problem we were dealing with because we were getting a lot of people that were using our dumpster for their private use. I went out the back door, which was directly right next to the dumpsters, and told the gentleman that was looked like throwing some tools into the dumpster, told him he couldn't do that and to stop. My presumption was that it was somehow broken and he was just discarding it.
Christopher left immediately after being confronted, leaving behind the pickaxe he bought just the day before. When employees examined it, they realized there was nothing wrong with it at all. By 12:30 p.m., Christopher was back at the condo. He parked Barry's Jeep. Its tires and wheel wells were now caked in mud. And within minutes, he was on the phone with police, reporting Barry missing. For Detective Bierman, the case broke wide open on Friday, July 28th. That morning, he got a call from Matthew Shorg, a local landscaper who'd been working near Barry's condo. As Matthew made his rounds, something at the bottom of a storm drain caught his eye.
I was walking over it and I saw I think it was an open wallet and there was a card in it, and that caught my attention. I looked in there and saw a wallet down in there. I looked through it. I looked at the name saw the name on the card, and pretty much just left it back where I found it on top of the storm drain. I figured it just, I don't know, it looked like it was dirty, and I just figured it was, I don't know, just left it behind. It wasn't my responsibility to return, so I just left it where I found it. Yeah, I heard his name on the news, and then I called the police immediately and reported it.
The wallet Matthew found wasn't just another clue. It was the thread that began to unravel Christopher's entire story. Neighbor Becky Weber told police she'd seen that same wallet sitting on Barry's desk on July 22nd when she'd gone into his condo. Now, just days later, it was at the bottom of a storm drain. Detectives soon uncovered that Christopher had been treating himself to a shopping spree using Barry's credit cards. A spree that began only after Barry vanished and included more than $1,400 worth of Botox. Over the course of just 5 days, Christopher racked up thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. Records revealed this wasn't new behavior. Christopher had prior convictions for similar crimes in both South Carolina and Georgia, including credit card fraud. In fact, he'd had an active warrant in South Carolina for parole violation, but at the time, that warrant wasn't extraditable. On July 31st, Detective Bierman arranged for a crucial test. 2 cadaver dogs were brought in from Cape Coral, specially trained canines capable of detecting the scent of human decomposition. To keep the test unbiased, detectives lined up 4 vehicles in the police parking lot. Among them was Barry's Jeep. The handlers weren't told which vehicle was connected to the investigation. The first dog, Indy, made a slow circle around all 4 cars. When she reached the Jeep, she stopped, then began barking, locked on the rear bumper and wheel wells. A second dog was brought in separately with a different handler, and again, the alert was the same. 2 different dogs, 2 different handlers, one consistent result. Both had detected the unmistakable scent of human remains inside Barry's Jeep, the vehicle Christopher had been driving after Barry's disappearance. The next morning, August 1st, detectives learned that Christopher's outstanding warrant from South Carolina had been upgraded to extraditable, giving them the opening they needed. Christopher was taken into custody on the parole violation, a charge that ensured he wouldn't be going anywhere while investigators continued building their murder case. It was while police searched Barry's condo after the arrest, they made another discovery. Suitcases packed and waiting by the door. Christopher was preparing to run. In the months following Christopher's arrest, police launched extensive searches across southwest Florida. Teams combed rural areas in Clewiston, focusing on the Airbnb where Christopher had stayed. Search dogs were also brought in. Aerial surveys were conducted, while the Marco Patriots, a volunteer search and rescue organization, offered their assistance. But the Florida wilderness kept its secrets, and Barry's body was never found. It would take nearly 2 years before Christopher Davis stood trial for Barry's murder in 2024, and prosecutors had to move forward without the one piece of evidence juries often expect: a body. But like those astronomers calculating Neptune's position before ever seeing it, the prosecution argued that the evidence all pointed to one inescapable conclusion: the sudden silence from a man who called his friends every day, the wallet at the bottom of a storm drain, the spree of charges on Barry's credit cards, cadaver dogs alerting to decomposition in Barry's Jeep, the purchase of burial tools, the sounds of an argument overheard by a neighbor, and Christopher's secret trip to Clewiston. Each clue was like a part of an equation, seemingly incomplete on its own, but together leading to only one possible solution. Barry Schmalbach wasn't missing. He was murdered by Christopher Davis. And after 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict.
We, the jury, finds as follows as to count 1 of the charge. Count 1, second-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of second-degree murder.
Christopher was sentenced to life in prison, the maximum penalty under Florida law for second-degree murder. Despite a successful prosecution, fundamental questions remain. What exactly happened inside Barry's condo? How did his life end? And where are his remains? Secrets Christopher still refuses to reveal. In May 2024, Barry's family gathered for a memorial service, but without his body, the grief felt incomplete. Still, they chose to celebrate the man they knew, someone whose presence had always drawn people together. For 56 years, Barry Schmalbach lived a life defined by generosity, loyalty, and connection. His humor and steadfast devotion are remembered not as traits of the past, but as a living legacy carried on by those he touched. At Christopher's sentencing, Barry's lifelong friend Rosalie offered a fitting tribute, one that captured not only the depth of their relationship, but the impact Barry left on everyone around him.
Barry Schmalbach was not just a friend, he was a family to all of us, and we all showed up for him. He may have looked like he lived in Florida alone, but he had a whole tribe that was always by his side. Barry was a ride or die. He stayed with his people. He was loyal. He was admirable. He was a person who brought everybody together. He had friendships all over the world that lasted lifetimes. If you met him for 5 minutes, you loved him because he was genuine and very true. He was the best person you'd ever meet. And Barry left a mark on everybody. I think he left a mark here as well this week. People that knew him for a year or two. People that knew him for lifetimes. The love that is in this room for him can't be matched. Can't be matched. And we would show up 110 times if we had to for him.
Follow The Minds of Madness on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To support the show and get access to ad-free episodes, extra content, and Patreon-exclusive episodes, go to patreon.com/madnesspod. To find us on Instagram and Facebook, search The Minds of Madness, and on Twitter using the handle @MadnessPod. And also, by checking out our sponsors and using our promo codes, you're also helping support the show. We've got all the links in our episode notes. So until next week, thanks for listening.